Well, I'm here with Rose Glassock, and wonderful to have you here. Thank you for joining with us. We've just heard a Bible reading about being compassionate and kind and gentle with each other. And we're just really thrilled that you can share with us some of your insights and expertise on maybe how we can be caring for each other or caring for even ourselves during this time of lockdown.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, everybody. My name's Rose. I am a psychologist. I've been a psychologist for, 20-something years. And I also work for the Department of Education, both as a psychologist and also supporting complex case management in Western Sydney. So I'm going to bring you this morning a bit of information about, as Phil said, caring for yourself and others, trying to put a bit of context and perspective around all the emotions that we might be feeling at the moment, especially now our lockdown has been extended, but also sharing with you a resource that was put together by the Department of Education, but it's freely available, and it's some really good resources that you could use for your family or your parents or all age groups. So we're just trying to cover a broad spectrum of wellbeing support for you today. So before I move on, I just wanted to acknowledge country. I'm in the Blue Mountains, which is Darug land. It's actually Darug and Gundungurra land. And in the mid-mountains where I am, it's Darug land. And Phil might share with you a photo that I took earlier in the year, and it's the pink flannel flowers, which are just beautiful. They bloom in a very special combination of fire and then heavy rain, which we've lived through before we got to COVID. But I just really like it as a way of acknowledging the beautiful landscape in which we live, but also that so often in life we need a particular sequence of events. So we need flood and fire in the case of these flowers, and that's where the flourishing comes, but also patience. The rumour is they only flower every 50 years. So we can put strategies in place to help us bloom, but we also might need to have a bit of patience as we work towards that. So I'd like to acknowledge the Darug people, who are the traditional custodians of the land in which I'm joining you from today, and paying my respects to elders past, present, and the youth who are our future. So I guess as we hear all the updates about COVID and we're talking with our work colleagues or family members, just hearing a whole lot of I guess sort of low-level distress of people, but also this feeling of, well, I'm okay, but I'm worried about someone else. We tend to quite often not necessarily focus in on ourselves, but we notice in other people some distress. So it could be, at your workplace, you think, I'm just doing my job. I have to get on with it. I can't complain about things. Everybody's busy. Everybody's overwhelmed. We keep hearing that phrase of we're all in this together. So my problems are not as big as other people's, and I shouldn't be drawing attention to myself. Or a whole lot of people are saying, I'm just tired. And I had a friend the other day say, COVID inertia is real. And it's like, I'm not going anywhere and I still can't get anything done. And it just really feels so different to last year. Last year, weirdly, there was a whole lot of energy and almost adrenaline. It was all a bit weird but new, like Zoom parties and Zoom trivia, and everyone was cleaning out their wardrobes and cleaning out their garage and doing all these things that were sort of more energizing. And this year, the terminology we're using is pandemic fatigue, and it really is that thing of, just getting up and getting on with the daily, just the general living or the general getting to work or generally supervising my children doing home learning. That's enough, and I'm tired from that. So again, I think also people are putting off their needs until it's over. I'll be okay when we get to when lockdown lifts. We'll be okay when I get my haircut. We'll be okay when I can go to Bunnings. Well, whatever your definition of I'll be okay is, like, when I can get on a plane again and go overseas. So I think again, where a lot of people are, instead of thinking, well, how am I going right now and what am I doing to look after myself and nurture myself and the people around me right now as we survive this day to day, there's a bit of future focus of going, oh, I'll get there in the end. And I guess today is about maybe having some little strategies to just help you in the day-to-day living. So one of the things that has been an interesting concept is that I do a lot of work with schools around supporting them working with trauma. So we call it trauma-informed practice and trauma-informed education. And when we started doing a lot of work, we were the bushfires were just escalating. And then we started to think about, well, how would you describe COVID-19 in terms of a trauma response? And if we look at, say, the Black Dog Institute, for example, they have a definition which is type 1 and type 2 trauma. And type 1 is an incident that happens, and the impact could be long-term, but the incident itself is a one-off. So, for example, a car accident or a bushfire is a one-off incident. And then we have a type 2 trauma, and we're often thinking about that in terms of ongoing distress. So that could be chronic mental health issues, drug and alcohol, domestic violence. We often think about those things where there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. And I'm not sure the Black Dog completely agree with me yet, but anyway, my Roseism is that COVID is a type 2 trauma, because it does just feel like it's going on and on and on. And even now with our latest media, it's like, don't think about 0 cases. Think about how we live with this now. So what we're going to have a little look at in a moment is a video which does mention trauma, which is why I'm introducing this concept to you, because it's an idea of the window of tolerance. So if we're thinking about how is our window of tolerance being affected by what we're living through at the moment. And I think sometimes even just having some language around what we're going through helps us to rationalize it a bit. So if you think, oh, people are defining this as a type 2 trauma, it's like, oh, well, it's okay now that I feel so tired, or okay that I'm having some of these responses, because that's actually a normal response to a type 2 trauma. It's a normal response to an abnormal event. It's not something that's, abnormally new anymore. So just as a prelude to the video you're going to watch, the window of tolerance is really about how are you going when life's just pretty okay, when things are just right. It doesn't mean bad things aren't happening, but if they do happen, you're pretty able to just adjust and cope with them. So if something distressing happens, you have a reaction that's about in par with that distressing event. It's not here's the event and here's the reaction. So again, in that window of tolerance, often able to think about problem solving a situation, sharing empathy and having kindness with other people, remaining in the present moment, and just feeling sort of open and curious. So that's the ideal. We're inside our window of tolerance, but unfortunately, in stressful situations, and especially, as I said, in traumatic situations, our window shrinks, and therefore if we've got a shrunken window, we're going to be outside either hyper or hypo about our window of tolerance. So I'm just going to share a video that's going to give you a bit more of an explanation about that.
The window of tolerance is a term used to talk about levels of alertness, what we can also call activation, that help people engage in their daily life. Every day, it's normal for all of us to move up and down in our levels of alertness. Maybe we watch our favorite sports team on TV and feel very engaged, and our level of alertness is pretty high. Then later on in the day, we curl up reading our favorite book, and our level of alertness is pretty low. It's really normal for people to move up and down throughout the day and to ebb and flow between feeling very alert and not as alert. We are able to move through these different states of alertness and manage them without much difficulty when we are feeling safe. This area is what we call someone's optimal zone. Here, people are able to balance and regulate the emotions coming up for them in ways that are calm, cool, collected, and connected. They are able to encounter stressing or difficult situations and manage their emotions. But what happens outside of our window of tolerance, outside of our optimal zone? This is something that we call dysregulation. Picture a window of tolerance, with our optimal zone being in the middle. We often talk about there being 2 different kinds of dysregulation. One, where we pop out of the top of our window, called hyperactivation, and one, where we drop out of the bottom, called hypoactivation. Hyperactivation is characterized by things like anxiety, overwhelming emotions, and accelerated thoughts and feelings. Sensations in our bodies that would tell us that we're here are things like increased heart rate, quickened breath, and maybe shaking or sweating. On the other end, hypoactivation is characterized by feelings of numbness or disconnect or lack of energy. Things can feel unreal, far away, or as if we've shut down. When we are in hypoactivation, our bodies experience a decrease in heart rate, slower breathing, and a general lack of physical sensation. Something to make note of is that dysregulation, both hyper and hypoactivation, make a lot of sense as responses to threats. It's what our brains and bodies do automatically to try to keep us safe in the face of real or perceived danger. So what exactly causes people to leave their windows of tolerance? Well, we know that a lot of different things can contribute to the increase or decrease in someone's level of activation. Danger is a primary reason. For example, a loud noise may increase someone's level of activation and send them to the top of their window. Or being in a crowd may make it difficult for some people to stay completely present in the moment, and their alertness may dip into the lower part of their windows. We also know that experiences of trauma can change the size of someone's window of tolerance. Traumatic experiences can reduce the size of someone's window, thus reducing the size of their optimal zone. As we talked about, this is where people can feel like they can manage their emotions in ways that are calm, cool, collected, and connected. Maybe things that used to be easy to handle, like a loud noise or large groups of people, don't feel as manageable anymore. So we know that our windows of tolerance can shrink as a result of traumatic experiences, and our optimal zones can become smaller. But there are also ways that we can grow and widen our windows as well. Learning to recognize the signs that we are outside of our window can be the first step in helping us stay in it. Then, practicing ways to intentionally manage our activation can bring us back into our windows when we find ourselves dysregulated. Most people benefit from guidance in this process, and you deserve support. And now we know a little bit more about the window of tolerance.
So in the video, you'll have seen, again, the idea of hyper-arousal and hypo-arousal. So that's where hyper, you're hyped up, you're agitated, you might be more angry, you might have those physical symptoms of shaking and trembling. It also might mean that you're having more negative thoughts or unhelpful thinking, and you might be feeling, acting a bit more defensively or feeling unsafe. And then hypo, I tend to give hypo a very important psychological term, which I call blah. So it's just like blah, low level, can't really be bothered to get out of bed, everything just seems like I'm walking through mud. It's just a bit harder. You just feel really disconnected. And even if you think, I think, I could ring that friend, the effort of doing that just feels hard. And also maybe your actual level of physical activity is decreased as well. So it's just like blah. That's the best way I can describe that. And so I think the video described it really clearly, that we have times when we might just be outside the window. And so there's two things, I guess. One is recognizing when we're out hyper or hypo. And the other thing is, how do we extend our window a bit? So with the hyper arousal, it's pretty logical. If you're thinking, I'm out there and I'm agitated and I'm a bit frazzled, what is going to calm me down? What are some simple steps that I can think about to calm me down? And the very easiest is just breathing. So breathing, just grounding you back, bringing you back into your body. And two easy ones to teach you is just square breathing. So from any of you who've got teeny tiny little kids, preschoolers, they can do this. So it's just a square, and you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. That's it. And then the other one that I like is triangle breathing. And so you just breathe in for 4, and then you hold for 4, and then you exhale for 8. And the reason for that is that it's actually the exhalation that's decreasing your parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm going to give you, this is a bit funny, I'm going to give you a demonstration of breathing now. So I'm going to breathe in for 4, hold, and then, and just to see if if I taught that, okay, I'm going to get Phil to do it too now. So we're going to breathe in for 4, hold, and then exhale. And the bit I didn't tell you is that it helps if you breathe out with more gusto. So you're breathing out through your mouth with more gusto. So that's a really, really simple, do anywhere, any time of day, feeling agitated, just breathe. Then there's, other things, just taking time out. So whether that's, if you're working from home, just taking a step away, going to make a cup of tea, going to use the bathroom, walking out the front door, doing a lap of your house, doing a lap of the garden, whatever you can do to just, it's a little circuit breaker. And then you can do some more formal things, like if you have a mindfulness practice or prayer or meditation, any of those things. Again, it's just the logical thing where you go, I'm hyper, what brings me back down, what settles me back down. And then the other one, so the hypo, which I've already told you I call the blah one, that's again, okay, so I've got a flat mood. How do I lift that? What are some things that energize me? So that could be deliberately doing some exercise, going out into the sunshine, again, just being outside, or calling a friend, because you're feeling disconnected, but actually making that effort to go, I'm just going to call someone or text them. Calling's better, but if texting is all you can manage, then that's what you do. And your text may even be, can you call me later today? And the other thing is, if that's an issue, I guess, in terms of those of you who might be working from home or supervising home learning, trying to set some really explicit tasks, and especially if the morning is harder. Often in this hypo, it's the getting started that's the difficulty. And so if you know that that's a challenge for you or anyone in your family or your friends, it's about saying, I'm going to make sure I've got a 9 o'clock meeting, because that's going to get me up and I've got to be on the Zoom or on Teams, or I have to get that task done at 9. So that gives you a deadline to aim for. And then often you'll find, okay, I'm up now and I'm chugging away. I can do this, and you get through another day. So that's essentially a quick rundown of the window of tolerance. And what I'd like to share with you now is just some more strategies, as I said, in terms of the Department of Education put forward this initiative that we called Care and Connect, and we developed it last year. So there was a group of 5 of us who are all psychologists who worked together. And it's publicly available, so anyone, whether you have children in a school or not, you can just type in Care and Connect New South Wales Education, and all of these resources are freely available to you. So with the Care and Connect, we really were just looking at 3 ideas, which is, if I'm concerned, what do I look for in changes in myself and others? So what do I need to know about what's sort of normal behavior and what's not so normal? And then if I've noticed that, then what do I do? And we've just termed that listen with kindness. And then the 3rd step is seeking advice. And I think the listening with kindness is the key, because what we're not trying to do is encourage anyone to become novice therapists or psychologists or counsellors, but knowing the boundaries within which your relationship with someone else is, or your skill set, but just being a listening ear as a first step. So when we're looking for changes, again, it's looking at changes in mood, changes in behaviour, and changes in thinking. And in the same way that you've heard a bit with the window of tolerance, they can be those sort of heightened behaviours. So feeling irritable, feeling agitated, feeling frustrated, again, having those unhelpful thoughts. It can be things like being more forgetful, being a bit more disorganised, being a bit more confused and lacking concentration, just feeling tired. And I think that that's where, again, at the moment, being a bit more gentle on ourselves, because we tend to go, I feel so tired, and think, but I haven't done anything. So it's like I haven't completed my checklist of tasks. I haven't earned the right to feel tired, but actually just knowing that right at the moment, feeling tired is a really normal reaction to everything that we're going through. Sweating over the small stuff, and also just feeling overwhelmed. And feeling overwhelmed, I guess that's again one of those things where we might think about managing the intake of information. So if you're a little bit addicted to the 11 o'clock Gladys, update, you can't get enough of Kerry Chant, then maybe think about, is that helpful to you or not helpful to you? Is it that you want to know the numbers and you want to know the update, but maybe you just get a succinct summary later on? Or does it reduce your anxiety or increase your anxiety if you're watching that every day? Does it increase your anxiety or reduce your anxiety if you're connecting with people who maybe on social media are a bit more, agitated about things? So it's not only knowing if we're feeling a bit overwhelmed, but I guess what we're also doing and what we can eliminate to just give us some space to be able to feel less overwhelmed. The other thing, I guess, in terms of behaviours, it's like we might be eating more or less. Most people seem to be eating a bit more.
Yes.
With the COVID curves, they're also a real thing. And so, when we're feeling stressed, that love of carbs, cheese on toast seemed to be the hit food of 2020. I don't know what it is this year. But also the self-medicating. So whether that's via food or for, alcohol or other drugs, again, increasing the use of those things. And then just some of the somatic complaints, having more headaches, having more muscle pains, which again might feel hard to explain, like I haven't done anything. Why do my shoulders hurt? Or, I keep having headaches. And so I'm going to say this a lot. You're going to get sick of me saying this, but again, it's about that being gentle on yourself and going, I don't have to necessarily explain why I've got sore shoulders today. I just do. And maybe I just take some time out to look after myself in that sense. I'm going to just give you a really, really quick snapshot, because as I said, this is all on the website if anyone is interested in more information. But what I've tried to do there is just offer you a little bit of an insight into what are the normal responses, which is really for any age group. So if we're thinking about children, young adults, elderly people, that those reactions are pretty much the same. But we do have some specific information and for groups of children. And I guess, with my education perspective, I'm just going to give you the 3 cohorts of children. I'm not a specialist in what aged for elderly people, what they might look like. So I'm going to let you research that by yourself. But for little people, so if I'm talking about the 3 to 5-year-olds, some of the things that you might see in their behaviour are a regression of skills. So it might be that they were toilet trained and now they're not. They were really able to feed themselves and use cutlery and now they're not. You might see a regression in their language. And when we can go out more, you might see a real, much more need for reassurance again, and that attention-seeking sort of behaviour, clingy, crying, being separated. So there's some of the things that impact on that age group. And it's really just about maintaining routines and predictability in the current world we can. Okay, we've got this unpredictable world outside our door. What can I contain in our house to be predictable as possible for my little people? Then if we look at that primary age group, so aged 5 to 12-year-olds, unfortunately for those who are trying to do home learning, that can look like being disengaged from learning, poor attention skills, having difficulties concentrating, so similar to all age groups. Again, a decline in memory and language skills, so spelling might go out the window. Some of their comprehension you think, oh, they understood this before and they don't seem to know it now. Increased reactivity, so just getting a bit more jumpy and irritable about things that you might think are not necessarily that big a deal. And a loss of interest in connecting with friends, so they might just decide that it's too hard. For adolescents, so again, just that 12 to 18-year-old, one of the indicators for them that things are getting a bit tough is a decline in self-care and personal hygiene. So they might just decide, oh, I'm in the shower for days, not washing my hair. Again, the disengaged from school and memory and concentration. A decline in written tasks and comprehension is quite common in that age group, and I guess the intensity, and especially if anyone's trying to do year 11 and 12 at the moment, trying to keep that momentum up with that level of cognitive ability. So that's relying on your frontal lobes here, and when you're overwhelmed and stressed, they've gone offline, and yet we keep wanting our young people to go, right, you're going to write all of this information at the level you used to do before. So increased moodiness, and again, maybe being disengaged from friends that they used to connect with. Sometimes it can also look like increase in risk-taking behaviour. So at the moment, hopefully they're home, but as the world opens up a bit, so some of those things can occur, like that could be increase in drug and alcohol use, or anything that is just placing them at a bit more risk. And the other thing, I guess, that we're really cautious about is a loss of optimism for the future. So if we're starting to hear a bit of loss of hope and a sense of, can't be bothered, what's the point, is where we start to get a little bit concerned. So I've given you lots and lots of things that to look at. It's like, oh, far out, all these things. And then what do we do? So that's where we come to the listening with kindness. And as I said, it's really about just initially being available to be a listening ear. And we just know so much that it's such a protective factor for someone to feel heard. And whether that's heard the whole story of what's upsetting them, or just feeling like, oh, I feel better that I just had that conversation. And we didn't even necessarily talk about what's distressing them. We just talked about, some silly show we're watching on Netflix at the moment. But even I feel better. I feel I've connected and I've shared, some humanity with other people, and I just feel better. So one of the things, I guess, is a little bit of a caution is that if you're wanting to support someone in your family or one of your friends or colleagues, and more so with a friend or colleague, is that I guess the level of support you can offer is a bit dependent on what your relationship was like before. So you might notice some things, but you may not be the person to go and have that, I guess, more private conversation about what's going on for them. I've noticed this distress. So sometimes it might be knowing maybe they won't receive this conversation from me very well, but I know, I can lean into someone else who can then go and have the conversation. Or I can let them know I've noticed and leave that door open to go, I've noticed that the last couple of times I've talked to you, you've said, I really am not sleeping very well. And then you've opened the door to have the conversation, but you're not barging in and going, and now tell me why you aren't sleeping and what are you doing about it? So one of the things, I guess, also that's important is it can be really helpful if you're naming a behaviour. And that's why a lot of the things I was trying to give you as examples are about behaviours. So you're not just saying, how are you? How are you going, Phil? Are you having an okay day today? What are you likely to say to me since we've never met before?
Going fine.
Yeah, I'm going fine. Finish, tick. Rose can go tick. I asked him how he was, and Phil can go phew. Didn't want to talk to her anyway. Never met her before. But if I knew Phil better, and I was able to say, last couple of times I've talked to you, Phil, you've said that you've just been eating all of this stuff, and you haven't been able to sleep very well, and you really, I know that usually you go out and do exercise every day, and you've said that for the last couple of weeks you haven't done that. What's going on? He's much more likely to respond about one of those things I've just mentioned. Oh yeah, I know I'm not eating so well, but I might change that this week, or got a salad for lunch today, or I haven't been exercising as much, but that's because of this. So by noticing a behaviour and asking about that specifically, it can open the door a bit more for them to respond with something that's going on, as opposed to just, I'm fine, which is the standard reply. So when we're trying to listen with kindness, and I apologise that this sounds like I'm just telling you stuff you would already know, but it's about having that really non-judgmental listening ear. So it's about, again, it's not being the solution. There's no expectation that you're going to be able to solve a person's distress in the conversation, but you're just able to hear it, and you're able to be patient and calm with them as they sort of work through telling you what it is they want to tell you. And just maybe, if you feel comfortable to start to explore about how long have you been feeling that way? What have you tried already? Some of the sort of, I guess, extension conversation starters, you could start to say, well, how are you managing this in your general life, I guess. And then the other thing I just wanted to emphasize is that when I've sort of presented you with this big long list of concerns, and then you might think, oh, either I've diagnosed myself because I've got half of that list, or, you know, my family does, or, you know, my colleagues at work. I think we're all like that. Just a reminder that mental health is a spectrum, and this is where it's good I'm on the Zoom, except you can't see all my arms. So it's really about going from, you know, excelling and thriving to just surviving, to then being struggling and then in distress. And it's a whole lot of the stuff we can do at this end. And as a friend, that's often where we come in. So it is things like sharing some strategies, if you've had any, about helping someone sleep. Oh, well, I find that, you know, I have lavender on my pillow and that's worked okay. It can just be saying things like, oh, well, you used to exercise and that's something that you usually enjoy. So I'm within your 5 kilometre radius. We could meet tomorrow at 4 o'clock and go for a walk. Or I'm not in your 5 kilometre radius. What about, you know, on Friday you go for a walk and ring me and we'll talk as you walk around. So some of the, you know, been to uni for 6 years to be a psychologist, and we start with, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? And how's your exercise? And that's really down on my spectrum. That's down here. And then we start to get to a bit more distress. Okay, so maybe there's some more low times of low mood, or some things that are impacting a bit more on your life. So again, they're the sort of first level responses there. You might think about talking to a GP, or you might seek support from all of the services that we do have online. So, and thinking about the big good ones, you know, we have Beyond Blue, we have Head to Health, which is a government site. If you're looking for support for young people, you've got Headspace and Reach Out, Kids Line, and they all have strategies for all ages and advice for parents, and helping yourself and helping others. So sometimes in that middle patch, it's about, I just need to know a bit more, and I can do some of these strategies myself, and off we go. And then we get to the other end of the spectrum where it's a bit more struggling. And the definition really of struggling is, how much is it impacting on your functioning now? How much is it impacting on your ability to engage with people you live with and love? How much is it impacting on how your ability to connect with work or your family, or the other things that you need to do? And then at the end, in crisis, obviously that's when we're thinking about GP referrals to mental health, to psychologists and psychiatrists and other formal clinical settings. But I just think it's really important not only to say a whole lot of this stuff is a normal response to what we're in at the moment, but a whole lot of this stuff is just pretty much, it's like just a reminder to be really deliberate about the stuff we know is good for us. And we forget, because when we're feeling overwhelmed, we forget to do it, and we need a little push along sometimes. I've just got a little, just as a prompt in case you want some homework from church today, is just a wellbeing wheel. And I particularly like it because it breaks wellbeing down. When we say, oh, you've got to look after your wellbeing. So, well, what's, you know, most people go, I have to do exercise, I have to eat well, maybe have a bath. I don't know, what else is good for my wellbeing? And this breaks it down into physical, social, spiritual, environmental, financial, occupational, emotional, and intellectual. So sometimes it's just good to think about, do I have something in each of those segments? Or what have I done over the last week that enhances my well-being? And if I look back at those activities and I try and match them to a segment, is there a focus on one area and not others? Are there other things that I could be doing to support myself or get a family plan going and going, okay, we're going to be doing, have we got something in every one of these sections, the 8 sections, across a week? Have we done something about wellbeing across that whole week? And then I guess what we're come to now is the third aspect, which is about seeking advice. So it's okay, I now know what to look for. And now I've had a bit of a conversation with my friends or colleagues, or I've just had a little bit of a chat with myself about where am I at. I've tried some strategies. I've had a little look at general wellbeing things. I'm thinking, is that making a difference? And now maybe I think I need to seek some more advice. So if you're trying to support someone in your family or a colleague or a friend, it's really just about saying, can I help you to seek more support? Again, it could be, we could look online together and look at some resources, and maybe you read them and I read them, and I'll get back to you in a couple of days and see what you think about that. Or I think maybe it might be a good idea. Some of the things you've told me, I am happy to hear, but I don't have the skills or expertise to help you through this. So this is a time maybe you're going to go to your GP or contact a private psychologist or counsellor, and then as a friend, what you can do is say in a couple of days, well, how did you go? Did you make contact with the GP? When have you got an appointment? And just following up, not to pry into what was talked about, but just I guess it's that check-in, about going, I'm just normalizing it's okay. It's an okay thing to do, to go and seek extra support for your mental health. And I'm just checking in if you went or not. You're not in a judgmental way, but did you make an appointment? In the same way, we might say, have you got your COVID vaccine booked in now? It's like, did you go to the appointment? How was it? Were they helpful, not helpful? And again, that can just help normalize things. And maybe this is a topical analogy as well, since we can't have haircuts. But one of the things that I like to remind people about is, if you are going to seek a mental health professional, often people feel like, well, I've got to go to one, and then if I don't like them, I don't go anymore. So I've heard quite a lot of people say, well, I went to a psychologist, I didn't like them. Okay, well, if you wanted your hair cut and you went to a hairdresser and they didn't do a very good haircut, you probably would never say, I'm never having my hair cut again in my whole life. And all the hairdressers have the pair of scissors, so they've got the same skills, but some people do it well and some people know how to cut your particular version of hair and other people don't. And you walk out going, oh my God, I've got to wear a hat. But you have another go. You let it grow out and you go back. So it might be a bit of a silly analogy, but I just think it's important that it is important to think about, if you do need to get to the point where you need to work with someone for more significant support about your mental health, you need to find a good match with that person. So if you or your family or your friend do go to an appointment and then you think, oh, I don't like that person, it's okay to go back to your GP or to get back on online and find another person and say, I think I can find a better match for me. So as I said, I've mentioned some of the resources that are available, but particularly if you are doing any online searching, just stick to the big ones and stick to the Australian ones. So as I said, for adults, it's Beyond Blue and the Black Dog Institute. Head to Health is our government one. And for kids, Kids Helpline, Reach Out and Headspace. And so just as a recap, the 3 stages are just really about looking for changes. So noticing changes in yourself and others, listening with kindness, and ensuring that you don't need to fix anything, but you can just show people that you care and that you've noticed and that you're here to support them, and then seeking advice for yourself or for others, and just sort of walking alongside them as they're seeking support. So I hope that's helpful. And
thank you so much, Rose. It's been incredibly helpful, and I've really appreciated the way that you keep coming back to that word kindness. Not only being kind to each other, but also being kind to ourselves. And I think that's a real message to take away today. And thanks so much for all the resources that you've been sharing. I'll make sure that there's links and opportunities for people to access that all. But yeah, once again, just thank you so much for your wisdom and for your helpfulness and your, shall I say, kind words that you've been sharing with us.
Thank you, Phil. See you, everybody.